this computer. So thank you everyone for joining today. I'm Araminta, and along with Annie, we manage the Fintech Marketing Hub and Slack. Today, I'm super excited to be doing a panel event with an amazing panelists. Just a bit of context on how the event will go. We'll start with an intro of each panelist. Then we'll do questions about email marketing for about 30 to 40 minutes. And then at 1:45, we'll leave the last 15 minutes for Q&A. So feel free to add questions in the chat and we'll get to them in the last 15 minutes. So, and everyone will receive a recording afterwards, by the way. So the main premise, the main question that we're going to start with is from 1 to 10, 10 being the most important, how important is email marketing to the success of your fintech? And a bit of context behind this question. Someone asked this in our Slack group, and we got a lot of different responses. Some people it's close to 10, some people it's below 5. And Amy Hardison had the great idea to put a panel together, and let's talk about this. We're going to probably start off with, does it make sense, or when does it make sense to talk about email marketing? And then we'll dive into how do you design an email marketing strategy and all that good stuff. So let's just start at the beginning with a bit of an intro. Based on that premise of from 1 to 10, how important is email marketing to the success of your fintech? And also please add like a bit of an intro of who you are and what you, the company that you work for and all that stuff. So I'll just start with Phil, who's the first here on my screen. Can you please give us a bit of an intro?
Yeah, so I'm Phil. I work for a company called Growth Gorilla, and we are a growth marketing fintech agency based in the UK. In terms of my experience, I've been working in CRM, email marketing now for 16 years. So I've been in the game for quite a long time. I've worked in many different industries. So I've worked in retail, energy, financial services, fintech, education, across B2B and B2C. So I've got I would kind of say a decent experience in terms of managing different companies in terms of their CRM, email marketing strategies, kind of making sure we have the right platforms, and really just making sure we adhere to best practices really across email marketing. For example, to answer your question, I would probably, obviously I'm pro email, so I'm very biased and would probably say it's definitely between a 9 and 10. Now, the reasons for that are that over the last year or so working with a lot of fintechs, there are huge gaps in terms of how they look at activation and retention for the users. So obviously there's a lot of money spent on acquisition, which I understand, trying to get people in to build their databases and build their audiences. But where I find there's a massive gap is trying to nurture those users down the journey, whether that's through activation, as in down those kind of steps of the funnel, whether that's showing, KYC, setting up their account, obviously then being able to say, for example, fund their account to invest or trade, for example, if that's the sort of platform they have. But also on the flip side of that, I feel as though, I work with companies where they've got huge databases and a lot of those people they class as inactive. And that's because they haven't kind of like engaged and nurtured those users over a period of time. So when they're now looking to kind of talk about a new product or a new service, it's a very hard kind of like beginning to try and get those users, I guess, back into the life cycle. So for me, if email's done right and you kind of map out your strategy from the get-go, from once a user comes in at the very top of the funnel, it can be very effective to basically nudge people down the funnel and obviously get them to convert, whether that's trading or investing or download your app or whatever the goal is. It can be very, very key, but you have to have a really good strategy in place at the very, very start.
You're muted, Minta.
Sorry. Helen, could you give us a bit of an intro on Tribe and what you do at Tribe?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm VP of Marketing at Tribe. I've been in the company for just over a year, but I've been in the payments and fintech industry for about 15 years, working in various different companies. So Tribe are a payments processor and technology company. So we're B2B. And so all my perspectives that I'll give will be about B2B marketing. And the majority of companies that I've worked for, including Tribe, are much more behind the scenes. So tend to be B2B2B, possibly to C at some point down the line, which means there's slightly different approach in some cases. And where Tribe's concerned, we're a younger business, so 3 years old. Until 4 months ago, there was only 2 people in the marketing team and 2 people in the sales team. So because of that, our approach to email marketing is early doors, I would say. And so in terms of a score, that 1 to 10 score, it's a lot lower, significantly lower, of course, than for Phil and his clients. But what we try to do with that, and I think it's probably important to say that that score will move up for sure. But at this point in time, and I think this is certainly true of my experience in startups and scale-ups, is I really believe that until you have the right data and mechanisms and teams in place to be able to execute real email marketing in a successful way, it is better to make sure you've got the fundamentals and basics built and performing well first. And then what I do is I try to look more holistically. So I think we're a very long way away from being ready to do a dedicated email marketing strategy. But for instance, we're about to launch a campaign, watch this space, which has multiple facets to it. So it will be virtual event, live event, it will be social content, all manner of different things. And of course, email will play an important part in that. And some of that will be reasonably standard. Some of it will be trialing some automation techniques. So I'm trying to think more than what are we going to do with email as its own piece. How do we make sure that we leverage it in the same way that we do other channels like social or events or whatever else, so that we've got this very holistic strategy. So in some of those campaigns, email is more important than it is in others. And so there's never a straight yes or no or a score when it comes to email at this point, I think.
Oh, really? So you wouldn't say like 4 or 5?
I'd say at the moment we're probably a 3 or a 4.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
to give you an example, we have, like I say, the basics, the fundamentals in place in terms of, automated responses when people sign up for their newsletter, and we're improving those through making sure we've got connected content and things that will help draw people in and get them to interact more. And we've got a regular newsletter and so on, but what we don't have at the moment is the ability to segment properly or look at actions and trigger responses with automated workflows. And that's something that we're building at the moment. So we're shaping that data and how that data is stored to give us the ability to build on it.
Awesome. And you, Jonathan, can you give us an intro of what you do and Monizze, and also your score from 1 to 10?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm basically looking after marketing at Monizze, which is a B2B company. It's also kind of funny because it's my first B2B company. Before that, I was working, B2C, more like neobank sort of companies where email marketing was definitely a big part of a strategy as well. I'm very enthusiastic about email marketing in general. When I give a note from 1 to 10, I never allow myself to give a 7, because 7 is like, that's kind of mess. So it's like 8 or above, it's a yes. And if it's under 7, then it probably means that it's a no. So I would definitely say 8 or 9. I think, the way I see it is just email marketing is always about trying to drive a certain business result, right? So based on what company you have, what stage of growth you are, like success might mean different things. It's tied to different metrics. And so whatever email marketing strategy that you design, you need to be able to measure the impact that it has on those specific metrics. So I would say in my previous company at BigPay, we would do campaigns around remittance, specifically targeted to people from certain nationalities, certain areas, who send money to one particular corridor. It would be able to say, this many people sent this amount of money after seeing this this email campaign. So the results were very tangible, and at the end of the month, like, it was very, very easy to prove the efficiency of what we're doing. It's the same thing what we're doing here. Like, we have people who have 1 out of our 4 products. We send emails to prospect, and then we're able to measure like how many people converted to 1 more product, 2 more products, 3 more products. So we're able to tie it back to a really important business metric, which is really, really key. So, and it works. Honestly, it works. And I think in B2B companies, we sometimes lack a little bit of creativity. So I always like to take the example of Medium, for instance, like the blogging platform, where when you sign up, they ask you about your interests, what you like, what you want to hear about, like the kind of topics, stuff like that. And then you don't actually mind getting a daily email from Medium, because usually it's content that's curated for you. There's nothing wrong with doing the same for B2B companies, and just, what are you interested in? Just asking questions during the onboarding or at later stage, capturing that data, and then making use of that data in your CRM system, so that whenever you deliver content, you're making sure that the people is going to receive like that your piece of content has some sort of affinity with the content, and then you sort of trigger a virtual cycle where they open your emails, they look forward to your email, and then you sort of nurture it.
Nice. So I'd like to start with kind of understanding when does email marketing make sense for a B2B fintech company? And I like what you said, Helen, that you kind of need to have the data right before you get started. So Phil, would you agree with that? Do you think that it only makes sense to start email marketing when you've got the data? And if not, what are the alternatives?
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that, because you could have the best looking email in the world, but if it's going to the wrong people and the data's wrong, then it's a waste of time. So I think the data is the biggest priority, especially for email marketing, because it has to be right, and it's getting it right at the start. And I think sometimes companies kind of get things set up very quickly, but they don't really look at like how to, let's say, qualify or best qualify a lead going forward. And sometimes you're playing catch up, and I find that a lot. At Growth Gorilla, when we work with B2B clients, is that they have like a strategy in place, but they're sometimes having to go back to speak to people to try and understand them better. Whereas what I'm trying to say to them is, actually, you need to look at that at the very start. So whether it's a sign up form or a landing page to try and get more from a user, that should be really at the very start. Because obviously going forward, when you're looking to then send an email to someone, you've got a lot more about that person and about the profile. So you can potentially tailor the email to that user. And I think, sometimes you can send an email out to someone, and if it's not relevant to them, then, like I said, it's a bit of a waste of time, really. And especially in the B2B, area, it's very important to make sure that you know that user very well once that lead comes in. And also, once it comes in at the very top, it's also trying to understand, like, to try and qualify the lead, because sometimes, as you know, like in a B2B environment, someone may come in, show interest in a product or service, but they may not be ready to really want to use that service at the very, very start. So if you can understand that user from the beginning, obviously that's useful information potentially to give over to the sales team or the customer service team when they eventually do reach out to that user. So yeah, it's very, very important having the right data at the very start. And if you can, obviously start with email at the very beginning. You may want to go to kind of like the old school routes, so direct marketing. There are other areas, kind of putting my CRM hat on. There are other channels that we can potentially use before obviously using email.
So let's talk about gathering the data and making sure you're gathering the right data. I'll ask you first, what have you seen are the best ways to gather data? And then I'll ask Helen and Jonathan how they do it.
Yeah, so I think I guess one of the best ways we try and kind of implement at Growth Gorilla is like landing pages, and making sure we have the right landing pages at the very start. So we would never really take the user down, let's say, the homepage of a website, because it's kind of like fair game in the sense of they can just navigate across different areas, and there's a higher potential of them kind of coming off the website because they're not finding what exactly that they want. So a landing page, a very targeted relevant landing page to them is kind of what we try and do to make sure that we have a clean kind of customer journey, and also we can ask the right questions. So having that in place, kind of cutting out all the noise from other areas of the website, and we can kind of obtain the right information, and that's kind of the strategy that we do.
You'd say you'd send paid traffic, no? Probably to those.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So paid traffic, whether that's through LinkedIn ads or through Facebook or any other social media platforms. Probably more LinkedIn, obviously, because we're looking, we're a B2B hat on. And we've implemented that quite a lot with some of our clients, and it's been working really, really well in terms of that kind of journey from a LinkedIn ad to a landing page, and then ultimately then becoming a lead.
Okay. So Helen, how would you like to, if you're doing it, if you're not doing it currently, but how would you like to, or what do you think is the best way to gather data for email marketing, and what kind of information do you usually ask?
Yeah, so I think we're already doing some things, and then some things are in the works. So we're just, we do a fair amount of content. So we've launched a podcast, we've got a regular blog, we've got a variety of other things. We do a lot of PR. So we get a lot of direct traffic to our site. We've got a lot of we do paid, both PPC and paid social. We do a variety of different things, and we do collect data reasonably well that way. What we've just done is we've started to try and catch product interest a bit more, to try and help us to do some targeted outreach, because at the moment what we've been doing is fairly sort of blanket in terms of sending out a monthly newsletter and all those kind of things. But while we were building the foundations, that's fine. Now it's time to take it to the next level and be much more targeted. We're also just putting into place a chatbot on the website, which will ask a series of questions to help feed in information and also help capture more data, fingers crossed. We'll see how that goes. We are just about to launch another campaign, which is kind of content, thought leadership led, and there'll be events and other things off the back. So we're doing a lot of in-person events as well, and that allows us to, we only really take the more qualitative data from that, which is generally pretty helpful. And then obviously we do tend to then do follow-up, email-based follow-up from those events as well. And there'll be sequences for those split across between the sales team and the marketing team. So we're trying to kind of bring in data from wherever we have interactions. But what we need to do is to, like I said, bolster some of the detail around that in terms of product interest, what type of company they are. And then one of the things that we have been looking at now is to see if we can integrate some form of intent data engine. So trying to capture data of people who are not yet given their details, or maybe they have, but we don't have a good view of that company. So we can try and capture a bit more at the front end and start building up, better informed lists that we can qualify more easily. So we've got a lot of different things going on to try and build that out.
Yeah, wow. So you're hoping to set up sequences for like every single different channel? Is that what you're hoping?
Not necessarily. I mean, for instance, we're going to do a couple of, because I think doing things like integrating the intent data engine, that's going to take a little bit of time. I want to make sure we get it right rather than end up with a massive, messy, different platforms and data. There are things that we can do at, I suppose, slightly more manual level, like looking at cross-channel interactions and seeing if there's any activation that we can do. So looking at our LinkedIn interactions, or those that are following us on LinkedIn, what they're interacting with, and maybe see if we can activate some more interactions through email. And, bringing those channels together, I think, is something that I'm working on with my team. I think some of my team are on this call. I haven't told them this yet, so surprise. So we'll be trying to kind of do that over the next couple of months. So it's a tough one, and some of it will be a little bit of try and see, because I think until we see that data coming in, and whether there's enough quality and clear segments. You know, we don't know what the shape of that outreach is going to look like.
Yeah. Jonathan, so how do you gather data at Monizze, and what kind of information are you usually looking for?
So it depends a little bit on, you know, what stage we're speaking about. Well, let's say at the prospect stage, our stance is that, you know, people don't have time to key in a long list of information. And so we try to ask like as little information as possible, but then we enrich that information in the background with data that's available through public databases, the national bank, and all these things, so that, you know, someone might just key in enterprise number, their name, and their, you know, their position in the company, and we'll try and pull the data. We're not there yet. We're setting it up, full disclosure. But then, you know, we're pulling a lot of information from whatever databases is available. So we have, you know, an idea of the size of the company, even the general health. You know, are they doing well? Like, what's been the latest reported numbers? Is it a company worth investing in because they're growing, or is it a company that's, you know, has been dwindling down in the last few years, and so it might not necessarily be, you know, worth of a big effort. So that's one stage, which I think is very useful. And then I think the other important thing is that data is basically a mindset within a company. And so, you know, various people from various teams can, you know, get random piece of data. You talking about someone from customer care who calls a client, has a conversation, asks, you know, how's it going? Like, or, you know, or were you, like, is it the first time that you're working with a company like ours? Or were you working with one of the competitors before? You get a name. And like, once you have that mindset data, you can, you know, you can say, okay, in the CRM team, what we're going to do is we're going to create a field in Salesforce, because we use Salesforce for most of our CRM stuff, where we can gather the name of the previous provider. And so, you know, for like, there's hi, Adrian. There's a lot of different piece of information that you can get through informal sources, especially in our business, where we have a lot of, like, you know, discussions and talks over the phone at the events, or even in person with people. If you can structure the mindset of people from different teams, and just, you know, create that sort of a system where in your CRM system, you gather that information formally, you can use that information afterwards in order to craft CRM campaigns that are a little more effective, or like targeted, I would say.
Just on that point of, I like what you're saying about mindset, and I think we could take a high level view before we go into specifics, which is strategy. How do you put together a strategy for email marketing? And do you have one, Jonathan, at Monizze? And kind of how did you put that together, if you do have one?
So I think for us, it's really based on company sort of OKRs and objectives. So, you know, we have like that one big company OKR, and then trickles down into how every team can sort of influence these big objectives. What's interesting for us as well is that, you know, even though our clients are employers, we also have email addresses of their employees, and so we also talk to the employees, because we want to influence some of their behaviors, and like, you know, where they use their cards, because we make more money when they use their card at like a small shop rather than a big chain, stuff like that. And so it really, you know, is like, what are we trying to achieve? What are the big numbers that are going to be important for the CEO, and then for everyone else? And then based off that, like, what are different initiatives that we can start doing? And usually it'll be, okay, take 1 month to plan 1 month of you know, campaigns and trying out stuff. We do it, like, we select the amount of channels, we create the content, we run it for 1 month. To 1 month where you look at the results, what worked, what didn't work, what do we need to iterate, do we need to try out the channels. Second month we do the same thing, and then, you know, it's just this on a rolling basis, basically.
And Helen, do you have are you planning on putting together some kind of email marketing strategy? Although I know you're not doing too much of it at the moment, but how would you, you know, once you've got the data, how would you go about putting this into, you know, something that everyone can be aligned with?
So I think my team get really annoyed with me for this, because they ask me a question and I say yes and no quite a lot, and unfortunately that is the answer here for me as well. So yes, there will be. But again, I think it's about, how do we feed in email as a vehicle within our campaigns? And that will be something that I want to refine quite quickly. I think with this campaign we've got coming up, that will be our test bed for trying some new processes. And then if those work, or whatever we take from them in terms of learning, we'll then apply to the next one. In terms of more sort of BAU type email marketing, there's two areas that I suppose I do want to put more regular focus into, and they will warrant their own sort of plan at least. One is to do something a bit smarter with things like newsletters. So rather than just an all company, you know, whatever we've got to tell people, try and have some more tailored versions based on those, hopefully based on buyer profiles, if we can get that data woven in. Then the main thing where I see email marketing contributing probably the most value is nurture. So I think for us, we have, you know, quite a volume actually of people coming in and interacting and giving us their details, but then they kind of disappear off again. And it's seeing what we can do with them. They may have visited a few pages of our website, and that's the hole we need to fill, because potentially there's that loss of leads because we're not actively nurturing them. We haven't had the resources to do it until now, but now we do. That's a really important focus for us, and that's where I think we can get, you know, a more defined email strategy to support that lead nurture activity.
Yeah, I like that topic of nurture. I kind of want to focus on that. Phil, like you've probably designed a lot of nurture campaigns in email marketing. What does that look like, a nurture strategy, and what have you seen works and doesn't work?
Yeah, definitely nurture is huge for B2B, because as Helen mentioned, some leads may come in and they might not be ready yet, so it's trying to understand and qualify, you know, their level of interest, I guess. So nurturing is huge, and I think you know, there's kind of three areas that I kind of like go through when setting up an email strategy, and I call it the three pillars. So for me, the three pillars are marketing, transactional, and operational comms, and it's making sure that we have some sort of strategy in place for each of those different areas. And I guess through like working with different clients over the years, there's always a lot of emphasis on marketing. So your BAU stuff, so like Helen mentioned, your newsletters and stuff like that, and your kind of like standard automations like welcome journeys and things. But what I find is a little bit of a gap is kind of looking at the transactional side, which is more based on like obviously the user behavior. So let's say a lead comes in and it shows interest in a certain product or service. Let's say they then start to view different parts of the website, or I don't know, download a white paper or an ebook, or I don't know, read a certain blog on the website. It's kind of taking all that information from the user and then kind of spitting it out using some sort of like way of a newsletter or some sort of campaign that's relevant based on obviously behavior. So going through the nurture journey, it's kind of looking at those things. It's looking at initially, what is the persona of that lead coming in? Have they engaged in other areas on the website? So, you know, have they downloaded, like I said, downloaded an ebook or been on the website and looked at certain pages? Once you start to then identify, okay, well, this user has shown interest at the top, they've also shown a little bit of behavior. Some of the tactics that I've put in during the email strategy is kind of like lead scoring. So once we can identify, okay, well, you know, Phil's come down the funnel, he's done this, this, and this, but Helen's come down the funnel and she hasn't done this and this. So actually, what's her level of intent? It might be a little bit less. And I think overlaying things like lead scoring, especially for B2B, can work quite well. But kind of going back to the question about nurturing, for me, it's kind of sending a consistent series of, let's say, emails. All of them should have a slightly different kind of like topic to them, and that tells them a little bit more about the company, but not really do the hard sell. So what I try and say is kind of like softly kind of talk about the services and the products. And maybe, let's say you build a series of say 7 emails over a period of time. It's only towards the back end of the series that you then start to kind of say, would you like to schedule a call, or would you, let's say, download that demo? So you're not really like hitting them straight away with all the kind of like hard selling. You kind of, like you said, nurturing them a little bit. And that's something that I try and like speak, when I speak to clients, is don't go in straight away with everything. Just kind of drip feed them a little bit of information. And it's been working quite well. Obviously, not everyone is ready to get involved with a product or service, but at least then, I guess you're just trying to be at the forefront of their mind when they do, let's say, eventually come back to you, that they're ready then and they think of you. So these are just like, I mean, there's so many moving parts, but these are some of the areas that I try and like adhere to and implement.
Yeah, and on that topic of sending a lot of emails, this is something we were talking about before we started recording. When does it get too much? I think probably most of us on this call has been on the receiving end of marketing automation. And I know probably a lot of us are not a big fan, or maybe they are, I'm not sure. So I want to go to Helen first, and because I know that we talked about this. When is marketing automation like too much, and how do you make sure that you're not repetitive and annoying, and how does that kind of affect your overall email marketing strategy and approach?
Yeah, so I've fairly strong feelings about this, but I get probably between 10 and 20 emails a day of agencies trying to sell me something. I can't even always tell what it is that they're. So it's annoying when you're not specific. You don't relate to me. You don't take the time to understand the business before you make the approach. And so for me, these are the things. This is the exact reason why I'm taking my time to build the data, because I'm fully aware we are trying to reach senior decision makers in businesses, CEOs, founders, CTOs, and imagine how many, I mean, if that's how many emails I get a day, and I just manage a marketing function, imagine for those individuals, how many they get a day and how much kind of fluff and wallpaper that is for them. Okay, so cutting through the noise is so important. And the trouble is, I think with a lot of it tends to be organizations with SDR functions who are kind of sending out these very cold emails that I end up just pressing delete on or leaving them unread. And as a result, I have thousands of unread emails in my inbox. Don't tell my boss. But that's the thing that we all need to try and avoid in this industry where there is so much noise anyway across so many different channels. The content, the subject line, the way that you, if you start by saying, we'd like to offer you these services around this, like, forget it, you've already lost them.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no point. And then what happens is you send up a follow-up 5 days or a week later, and then you've already annoyed them. So I think it's about thinking it through properly first. It's about making sure you've got that data and that you can make it. You've got to answer the question, what's in it for them, especially top of funnel. When you're then a bit further down, you should be getting more specific and more relatable, because in theory you should have more information on those people that you're trying to engage. So then frequency is a really, really tough thing, I think. If you think about how many, even just newsletters and other things that people are contending with in their inbox. So sometimes it might be about sort of mixing it up and thinking about cross-channel interactions and mixing that in with email rather than just plugging away at sending. You can set up a sequence in advance and you can do these automated email sequences. You've already set them, but if you're not looking at how each has performed, who's responded, who's clicked, who's done, you could be missing that it's really not doing anything and you just let it continue. So I think that kind of constant monitoring and tweaking and adjusting to make sure that it is performing is something that's missed a lot.
Jonathan, email marketing, you've said, works quite well for you. So obviously you're able to cut through the noise a bit. What do you think about this, and how have you at Monizze kind of, tried to not be repetitive and make sure that it's personalized and targeted?
So first of all, they say that Bitcoin is bad for the environment. I'd love to see the numbers on cold emails and like cold LinkedIn messages, like the amount of energy that it takes. It's probably really bad as well. So that's a bit of a side note. The second thing is, as I was saying, I think before the call, is like we're in a bit of a privileged position because we sell purchasing power. So in a sense, it's especially now in like, given the markets and everything that's going on, like people read, like, we don't have to shove it down their throats. It's like, yes, give me more purchasing powers for my employees without me having to give them a 5 or 10% raise. So that's, we're lucky in a sense, and we're a bit of an anomaly. I think the second thing is really, and actually I'll put myself in the in the shoes of someone who gets also like a number of B2B offers. In the last 6 months, I've actually taken the step to get in touch with a B2B company and ask for a demo myself once. It was last week. It was with this company called Nyst. You might have heard of it or not. But the amount of like free, valuable content that they give out on their platform is so good. It's like every time I open one of their LinkedIn posts, I'm hooked. I want to read everything. There's usually like a video of 3-4 minutes. Put it in sound because like I'm learning so much from me, like from my industry. And because they're doing that, I'm like, well, these guys, are experts. They're giving me sort of like free content that's super valuable. It's like they're becoming a destination for me. It's somewhere where I want to go to find valuable information. And if they know all of this, then, and on top of it, they provide like a B2B software that can help me with my lead gen, like given everything they're doing, like, yeah, these guys know what they're talking about. So I scheduled a demo call for next week. I already had like a 15-minute call where I was pre-qualified based on my industry, like based on number of criteria. Like, hey, these guys get it. Like, I want to do what they do, but for me, for my business. So I take a lot of inspiration from from some of these things. It's very rare, but it all boils down to like value. What kind of value you're bringing to your audience, and it's it's a whole shift that everybody's speaking about, from lead gen to demand gen. Like, create a demand, and your tribe is gonna naturally build around you if you give them enough value for free without necessarily trying to sell them something like in your first message, or the first time they read something from you.
Yeah.
It's the dream, isn't it? I think being and I agree with you. I think Cognizant is a great example of how to do it right. And actually we're engaging with them for that same reason. But I think they've almost created a pull strategy, I think, with how they operate. And like Jonathan says, it's in lots of different ways. And you get so much value that you want to go to them. I mean, that's what we're all shooting for, right?
What I don't know if I know them. Like, can someone type it in the chat just so we can check them out? But I was going to ask examples, so that'd be really interesting to check out. Kind of someone doing it properly, doing it well. And on the topic of value, Phil, what have you seen, like when you're working with clients, what kind of value do you encourage clients to offer to their email marketing, in their email marketing? What does that mean when you're working with clients, I guess?
Yeah, I think for me, value means relevancy, and I think you have to be relevant to the user at the very start, because going back to the topic of like frequency, and I think we spoke about it obviously before everyone came on. Like, I'm in the kind of the group of as long as it's relevant to me, I don't mind receiving 10, 20 emails from that same company in a week, because the content's relevant to me. And I think it's making sure that you try and like stay and adhere to that. And I think from a value perspective, Jonathan was mentioning there, like the articles and the content that he's receiving, it's very like on what he does. And where I guess I've tried to apply it to the clients that I work with is it's going, okay, you've got this product, this service, but you also, you know what you're talking about, so you are a market leader, you've got a lot of good content on your blog, but you're not showcasing it. And this is where they need to be better in terms of offering that value out a little bit more. Sometimes it's just awareness, because you can have so many articles on your blog, but in theory, like, not everyone's going to read them. So you need to be able to get that out. And I think, we talked before about nurturing and stuff like that. You need to showcase these articles and, target people who have shown behavior previously on the website. When we talk about, like, looking at engagement and stuff like that. What's worked quite well with us from the Growth Gorilla side is we have a lot of ebooks on the website. So we offer out kind of our kind of thought leadership and stuff like that. We have one for CRM, we have one for paid. So basically, if you come on the website and you are interested in certain topics, we've got that information for you. So when we go to a client, we say, right, okay, if you have white papers or reports or anything that shows, like, you've done a bit of research and it's there open to everyone, you should be really highlighting that. But yeah, I get it. Some companies don't do it well, and they just basically throw out an email to someone. And Helen's probably been a recipient of many of these, and straight away you just turned off. And as soon as you kind of go down that route, it's a long, hard battle to try and get someone back and engaged. So yeah, that's kind of where I see kind of value, is really just being really relevant to the audience that you're targeting.
Yeah. And what do you think about newsletters? Like, is newsletter part of the value? Is that a good way of getting someone into the funnel? What are your thoughts on newsletters?
So they can be done well and done badly. So I'll give you a good example. So I received a newsletter today from Free Trade, and it's really, really long, but it's quite lighthearted, and they get across what they're trying to kind of say about trading and investments in a way that, for someone who isn't a avid trader, obviously I know the market, but I'm not an active person who does that. It's quite engaging, and it works quite well for me. Now, on the flip side of that, I receive newsletters sometimes, and it's just boring. Like, it doesn't catch me. It doesn't catch my kind of engagement to wanting to click through to the website. And sometimes I think subject lines are very, very key, and especially in the B2B world, because you are trying to fight the noise. So that's really, really important, especially with newsletters. I think if you just put, like, our latest newsletter as a subject line, it's not really going to want me to open that campaign. So it's really just trying to, like, test and optimize and try a few different things out. But newsletters can work very well if they're applied in the right way. And going back to the kind of the discussion about data, if you know previously what people are, let's say, engaging on the website on, or what they've opened previously from you, you can potentially tailor that newsletter to how, to their needs. So yeah, it can work well, but it's got to be done right. And it's not just let's just bung together all the latest news articles and just send something out. I think people are kind of like, don't want that anymore. They want a little bit more.
That's interesting, because sorry, I was going to ask you, Jonathan. Yeah, go ahead.
No, because if I can just add on to that, and especially I think on the data point, I think for me, marketing is really about the limbic brain. So the limbic brain is a part of the brain that's involved in behavioral and emotional responses. And the data that you collect should help you create or craft better marketing messages that are going to trigger a response from your limbic brain, because that's how effective marketing is done. And so, collect the data is going to help you create limbic messages, or like messages are going to trigger a positive sort of emotional response from your brain. Sorry, that was
I like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was going to ask you actually, because you said that you have 60% open rates. Is it on your newsletter or on your marketing automation?
So it's on newsletters.
How do you do it?
So we send
high open rates.
I think it's consistency for sure. I mean, obviously there are some technical stuff that you need to take into account, like no reply responses, blah 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 blah, just to make sure that you optimize. But I think consistency is really key, and people expecting a message from you, and they know what they're going to find in it. And so often for us, what we'll do is we'll communicate on extension of our acceptance network, and this is where you can use your card where you couldn't use it before. As much as we can, we'll try and tailor this because people live in different parts of Belgium, and so they don't necessarily have access to all the same shop and stuff like that. But we give them like contextual information that's still considered transactional, so it's GDPR compliant. You don't necessarily need to deal with a lot of like unsubscribes or anything, but it's like we're informing you that you can use your money in even more places than before. And so that's something that people apparently find valuable. They know exactly what time of the month or around what time of the month they're going to get it, which is good. The other newsletter we send is just, we have a dedicated platform where people can spend some of their vouchers and just informing them like, like these are the new deals, new offers, this is how much you can save and blah, blah. I think, like monetary value is obviously still very, very important for people, very, very key, and does trigger an emotional response for a lot of people. So understanding, they could be saving somewhere is apparently something that they can really relate to. So it's just like I'd like to say we have a secret sauce and we're not sharing it. The truth is there's no secret sauce. I think what we're doing is like we're lucky to be in sort of a niche market where basically, as I was saying before, like giving people purchasing power. There's nothing more powerful right now than this. So it's very relevant within the context that we're in.
Yeah, and Philippa raises a good point, which is it kind of depends on who the newsletter is going to. And I kind of want to cover that in the Q&A. But before, I just wanted to ask you, Helen, because I know you've got a newsletter as well. And it's, I don't know, is it working quite well for you? What have you seen works and what doesn't work?
We actually stopped it for a little while because it wasn't working, and also because we needed to do a huge data clean. So once we had done the data clean, or at least, obviously it's an ongoing process, but we'd done a bigger clean. We just stopped to think about it for a bit, rather than just carry on with the same thing we've always done. Had a really good look at what was creating interactions. So where the clicks were tending to be, what type of content that was it around certain subjects, or was it product related? Was it events? What was it? And it was kind of interesting to see that there was a real mixture. So we tend to share things like our latest blog, but also, what are the up and coming live events that our team will be at, and then include a click through to arrange to meet them there if you want to. That seems to work pretty well, actually. If we're also sharing, obviously if we've got like a big news announcement, then we would include that, and generally they get quite a lot of clicks as well. I'm just trying to think, our open rate's embarrassing compared to Jonathan's. It's around about 25%.
Still pretty good.
I mean, it's not the worst, but it's sort of slowly been coming up. And then on things like our automation messages, that obviously the open rates are a lot higher, and on campaign stuff it's a lot higher. So I think we've still got some work to do to continually sort of refine. But we've kind of badged our newsletter with its own name, so it's got a bit more of a theme, and we've tried to see that's kind of giving it a little bit of an uplift. But I think what we're doing next is, I see Philippa's pointing there about all subscribers versus partners and clients, and we do a separate client one, but we do include clients on our kind of all subscriber newsletter as well. And what we're going to do next is really break those out, because we can afford to talk more about product developments and smaller things that in a way that connects with the clients in a better way, and even for those that are perhaps not live yet in implementation or about to sign, and then we have ones which are more kind of stakeholder focused, and then some that are more kind of lead generation focused or lead nurture focused. So that's what I've done in the past, and I'm keen to sort of bring that through. But I think we've built some reasonable basics, and we just have to keep an eye on how well those are performing and continually learn from what's working and what's not.
Yeah, awesome. So we've got 10 minutes for Q&A, and there's a couple of questions here. And if you've got a question, anyone listening in, feel free to add it in the chat and we'll cover it. I like Amy's question. I was going to ask it, but I think it's better if Amy asks. Amy, are you open to turning on your mic and just asking yourself, or would you rather I ask it? If you're around, you're welcome to do that.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Helen, at the beginning you were talking about, we were all talking about all of the data, and I was wondering how you pull it together into one view. Like the way you were talking about it, sounds like some of it could be in something like Marketo or HubSpot or Google Analytics. Like, how do you pull it together so you can see one holistic view of the data?
Yeah. This is it's a tough one. So we use HubSpot, so we do get data from people subscribing or those who are booking a meeting. We've got client data in there, so we've got it sitting behind our website. It's also our CRM, so it's kind of our one source of truth, provided that obviously that data is being kept up to date and we've got all the relevant fields in there. So it's always a work in progress. Where it becomes a little bit more problematic, and this is probably true of any of these kind of platforms, so I've worked with a good few others in the past, is things like social channels. So you can see interactions, but you can't always match those contacts, for instance, with who you've got in your CRM very easily. LinkedIn is a closed API, so that is very difficult. So at the moment, what we're about to do is more of a manual process to see if we can spot names and match them up with people in our CRM. So that's a bit tougher. If anyone knows a better way around that, please let me know. So it's good to try and have a platform that can underpin as much as possible, or you can integrate different tools that make sure you've got it all in one place, because the more silos you create with tech, the more of a mess you'll end up with. And so we're very, very much sticking with HubSpot, although we may plug in some other pieces. I'm only willing to look at tools that will integrate properly with HubSpot to make sure that we do keep that one point of truth.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to having the right tools. I'd be curious to hear, Phil, because you've probably worked on so many different email nurturing campaigns and all that. What are your favorite tools to work with?
Good question. So I guess two of the key tools that I use, and they're very similar, but I've used them with different companies. One's Litmus. Litmus is great, especially for an email testing tool, and also allows you to make sure that they look right in different mailboxes. It also has things like spam filter, testing and identification. Litmus is great, but as an alternative to Litmus, Email on Acid is really good as well.
Email on Acid?
Email on Acid, yeah. It's just like Litmus, but it's a little bit cheaper. So if you obviously, trying to like save your pennies, Email on Acid is pretty good. So they're two tools that I use quite a lot with some of our clients. Another tool that I use, I'll say it's a tool, but another website for inspiration is a website called Really Good Emails. And that's great for kind of, we all have those kind of like blockages where you kind of struggle to think, how can I put this email together? What's the type of theme do I want to use? It's a great website to kind of look at what other companies have done across different, different areas, whether it's reactivation or welcome emails or nurturing. It's a good one to have a look at. From a platform perspective, I get asked a lot, what's the best platform to use out there? And I can't give an answer to say there's one, because I think it depends on the stage of where you are. So some platforms like Adobe, HubSpot, Salesforce, they're great for companies who are at, say, a stage where they're kind of established and are looking to grow and do some cool stuff more dynamically. But there are other platforms like ActiveCampaign, Customer.io, which is one which I'm hearing a lot of good stuff about. that are kind of more for kind of the startup scale ups, and they're good platforms where you can use it as a CRM tool, but you could also use it for multi-channel purposes as well. So yeah, they're kind of some good ones.
That's cool. That's a good number of tools. And Philippa, you've got a question. Yeah, and you've also got some great comments. So would you be willing to turn your mic on and ask your question if you're here?
Oh, sorry. I'm just sat here eating a Twix. So there we go. Yeah, my question was just, what are the big no-nos when starting out in B2B email marketing? Even though I've done it many times before, starting from scratch in this new company is certainly going to be a challenge.
Anyone?
Yeah, I can give you my 2 pennies worth. So what I found that doesn't work is using emojis in subject lines for businesses.
Really?
Hate it. People hate it. Yeah, I can see Helen nodding her head. Yeah, they're not a fan, and I've tested that. So doing various different testing between subject having emojis and subject lines and not doesn't work. One that I found does work. Give you I guess a pro one is basically just be more personalized with the from name. So for example, Phil Allen at Growth Gorilla, or just my name, then just using the company name seems to work a little bit better because it just seems a little bit more personalized than just throwing out the company name. And again, that's through various testing. That seems to work quite well. So yeah, I think the emojis ones is a big no-no. From experience, it doesn't work.
Nice. Since we've only got a few minutes left, I thought I'll go round everyone and you can answer that question, like what best practices, something like that. And also please tell the panel where everyone can find you online, maybe not email so that you're not targeted, but your social or your website, the name of your website. And let's start with Jonathan.
What was the question again?
So Philippa's questions was like, what are some big no-nos? I guess it's just kind of like, what are some best practices and what have you seen does not work? And what are some what are some best practices?
So it's funny about emojis and stuff like that. I think it might depend a little bit on your tone of voice as a company. I think probably a company like Monizze could they could dare sending an email even to a business or for the B2B account with emojis. In B2C, what I've seen is emojis in titles and in the emails definitely work. Especially if you use emojis, for instance, so bullet points. So you're talking about something in a bullet point and using an emoji that sort of represents or captures the idea that you're trying to put in the bullet point. That I mean, in my experience, it can work. Big no-nos is I've gotten a lot of we've gotten a lot of backlash for sending emails about Father's Day and stuff like that, and people saying my father has been dead for 65 years, how dare you? And so I think we need to be more and more careful in the way we address some topics, probably more inclusive, and in the way you phrase things is really, really key. I think it's just as the world is changing, you have sensitivities that you need to take into account whenever you're doing something. And so, inclusive writing, choosing inclusive images, not necessarily as, this is a token, we put an image there, but conveying it in your company values as well is really, really important. And so if you fake it, people will see that you're faking it. And my take is that, even though your data or your tracking might not be perfect, I think it's always best to start and do things rather than wait for all the stars to be aligned and Mercury to not be in retrograde before you start doing your email marketing.
And where can people find you online if they want to learn more about you and Monizze?
So definitely LinkedIn is my most active media. I used to be more active on Twitter, but then I didn't have mental space for NFTs and cryptos anymore these days. So I just stick to these days.
Perfect. We'll add the link. And Helen, what are some no-nos, best practices that you've experienced from your own experience doing email?
I would probably apply this one to pretty much anything in, not just in marketing, actually, probably in life. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So really just
Agreed.
Thank you. So I think it's about really making sure you understand the purpose of what you're doing before you just kind of throw yourself into it. And I do think that's especially important with email, because sometimes you only get one shot, and if you blow that shot straight away, then you've lost potentially the opportunity to engage that contact later on, or at least it will be more difficult. So I think really think first about where email is going to be most effective for meeting whatever your objectives are as a marketing organization, sales for the company. And map it from there. Obviously, I've already talked about data, so I won't really go into that. But I suppose going back to something I said earlier as well, it's just make sure you're really clear, and you make sure you relate it to your audience. And if you can, answer the question, what's in it for them? So if you can provide them value through what through your outreach, whatever medium that is, but particularly email, then you're far more likely to do better. And I think Jonathan's point there about sensitivities is really important. Don't assume that because you find something funny, they will come across the same to the person who's receiving that email, for instance, because tone is really easy to misinterpret on email. So make sure that you test those messages. If you're trying to be humorous or smart or whatever, just make sure that there's no room for misinterpretation.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Where can people find you online or connect?
I'm a LinkedIn girl as well. I mean, I am on Twitter, but LinkedIn's my most active spot as well.
Great. And Phil, I know you already answered the question, so just where can people find you online and learn more?
Yeah, so I've just dropped some of my details in the chat, but
Nice.
I'm on LinkedIn as well. So please reach out if you want to connect. That'd be great. I've also dropped up our website and my email address. So I've put my email address out there. So if anyone wants to reach out, like I love talking about this stuff, I really do. So if anyone wants to have a more of an in-depth discussion about it, happy to do that.
Yeah, there's so much to cover, and 1 hour is obviously not enough, but I really appreciate all of you answering all my questions and going into so much detail. Thanks again to everyone who attended live. Really appreciate it, and we'll send everyone the recording afterwards. So that's it for today. Thanks again, everyone, and have a good rest of the day.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you.
Bye now. Bye-bye.